welcome on in, guys, back over to Radiant Strike, where we find ourselves in the Guardian League again, where Riot decided to have a bit of a client diff today. So for today, myself and Adam are going to be going over, a little bit of a pregame show, get you guys hyped up for the games that are still going on, but just not on air.
Yeah, I mean, last night, of course, we had the issue where we couldn't get into spectate client for game three of the night, game two or game three for the night. At this point, we don't know what's going on, right? Hasn't said anything about it. There's nothing in the client that's saying anything about it. I think they're just ignoring us because they hate all amateur leagues, but we're just gonna run with what we've got here, Schnecky.
Yeah, they said, dude, you guys work so damn hard over at Radiant Strike. You guys deserve the night off. So, it's like, okay, we can talk for a little bit here and get a little bit of juice on it. But at the end of the day, man, we still got the teams playing here, Adam. So I do want to take, a second to really talk about what we've seen as meta kind of being established throughout the first 2 weeks of Guardian League here, man, as we do go into week three. Kind of want to talk about what's really working here and where some of these teams are really cashing in these wins.
Yeah, I think one of the main things to take a look at when we look at what is strong in this league is the fact that we've got the high prevalence of some of the champions that are very prevalent in our Onslaught League as well, as we were talking about. Most picked here, the Trundle, the Caitlyn, no real surprise because those are champions that we've come to expect. The Victor, Hecarim, very high presence as well. And on that ban list there, Jinx most banned and still on that most picked. She has 100% presence throughout our first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, it's kind of disgusting, but if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? Maybe we'll see, a bit of an adjustment here coming into, the latter half of some of the weeks here. But I mean, ultimately, man, I do expect to keep on seeing a lot of that Caitlyn, a lot of that Jinx getting banned out here. But I mean, I would like to see a couple of changes here. We did see kind of Zoe really dominate, the first couple of weeks here, especially even doing well against some of that Victor pick, which is also, a real staple part of the meta right now. You see it picked quite a bit or banned out. So seeing some of those not so frequent picks kind of come in and take over and beat some of those higher tier meta picks, I mean, it does give me a little bit of hope that we might see a bit of changes.
Yeah, I think that especially considering what we saw in the Onslaught League with the Felios rising to prominence as well. It's an interesting situation because you've got the strong champions that are predefined by the meta, but they don't necessarily line up with what is actually strong. And what we've seen thus far this season, Xin Zhao 4-0 to start off the season, 4 picks, 4 wins, pretty good from there. And what we also see up on the most picked list there is the Kled, picked up 5 times, you know, 4-1 throughout those games as well. It's those picks that are starting to really pop off. And Kled isn't a champion that's very good right now. I think it's sort of been established from Kled mains, from former Kled mains, that Kled sucks. But the fact that he still carries an 80% win rate definitely means that this league has a little bit of a meta evolving for itself.
Yeah, well, it really seems like the jungle and also the top lane are kind of what's really being focused on, and more of an engaged, centralized, beefy, bruisery based approach here to allow you to have that front line and have that engage and allow your mid lane control mage later on throughout the game to get some of the damage out, as well as these 80 carries. You see again the Aphelios, Caitlyn, and the Jinx all have a lot of range when they're utilizing some of their abilities later on outside of the Aphelios prominent combo with the red and white guns here. But you have a lot of range on them, so I do think it's those engaged type tops and jungles that are really kind of allowing the team to really play around it and have those strong 80 carries and have those strong mids really shine.
Yeah, and I think if we look at these loss percentage stats, really interesting to see Lulu that high up. Lulu's a champion that works so well in the bot lane, but maybe the minor nerf on top of just lack of comfort in a way potentially is leading to this Lulu not feeling as strong as it maybe should be.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit different looking at some of the win rates here than what we can typically expect when it comes to picks like that Lulu. And I think one of the major factors is a lot of it revolves around kind of that 80 carrier, whoever essentially that Lulu's going to really be buffing out. So sometimes when that 80 carry does die early into a fight, you don't get as much of the value as you usually do pairing up that Lulu with something like an Aphelios, like a Jinx, and it kind of just falls a little bit short here. So we need to start to see, some of these potentially, more supports that are based on, kind of keeping the entire team alive. I expect to see Karma still very prominent in the meta, whereas when your AD carry dies, you still have a lot of value out of the Karma here. Maybe Soraka as well, but I don't want to say Soraka two more times, or else the Church of LS might come and summon some Soraka
Oh,
mid here.
true,
So
yeah.
I'm gonna kind of stop on the Soraka note.
Yeah, Soraka just really strong right now as well. It's something that we haven't seen a whole lot of, but if we take a look at some of the champions with those high win rates there, a lot of engaged supports. You see the Nautilus, you see the Thresh, and then you see the Lux down there as well. I mean, Lux not really engaged, but it does have crowd control into the kit, whereas a lot of the things that don't have that high win percentage, like the Lulu, the Karma, they don't have as much crowd control. They have very
Right, right.
conditional crowd control. So really interesting to see how that is playing out. But of course, as we look at how the week progresses here. Unfortunately, we can't tune into any games. It's a little bit sad, but hopefully, you know, you can still keep up to date with the standings and everything, and keep up with the match reports basically as they come through. I'm pretty sure our predictions are the exact same across the board. We have no spicy predictions. We are the most boring casting crew
Yeah,
for predictions.
the most lackluster differences in terms of opinions on how everyone's doing here. But you guys can take a look for yourself. We do have, kind of what we expect to really come out of this week 3 today. Now, I'm really hoping that all of us are just like completely wrong, so we can all look back and just say we all suck together. But this is kind of what we do expect for this week here. Again, we do have YCT versus Girl here as one of those really, big matchups here, Adam, and a couple of other ones as well.
Yeah, and I mean, it's sort of interesting that the Stunned Gaming Cosmic, one of the teams that we had high hopes for going in, is starting to fall off a little bit here. It seems as if the shoe is on Grim or GRL, Grim Rider Legion there. It seems like they're riding up in the standings just a little bit more. They're the ones who are uh, sort of now the favorites in their own group. But of course, Yale C team is still a team to be reckoned with. They are going to try and hold their own there. And Team Ambition Destiny, despite a really rough week 1, I think, from our opinions, they've been able to bounce back quite well, and they're looking poised to hopefully take over their own group in their own right. But I think it has to go with mentioning this, that we only have 6 games showing here, despite there being more scheduled. And unfortunately, it is just because of what happened with Suits Cuties and the fact that they got disqualified. So now this league is a lot more wide open. 6 playoff spots, only 7 teams competing.
Yep.
Basically, if you're in Sapphire Division, it's just don't be last.
Yeah, exactly right. It's the fight to at least make it past that group stage there. And I think one thing really important as well, and you kind of touched up on here, was talking about SGC and I guess in turn SGI as well here, since we do have a couple of roster swaps here, Adam, from Stun Gaming, both in the Incarnate and Cosmic roster. Whereas I believe what happened here was that we had the top and mid laner from the current SGI roster going over to the new Cosmic roster, whereas we had I think some of the fill players for a different roster now come in to the SGI roster. So essentially, both rosters include 2 new mid lanes that weren't primarily on the team, and 2 new top lanes as well. So I do expect it to shake things up a little bit here, and I think it's what they needed to kind of reinvigorate and revitalize here. And hopefully, it does cut a bit of make a bit of a shakeup here in this division.
It's definitely a little bit of a switch up. At the end of the day, I think one of the main things we've got to keep our eye on is how they're going to affect the power rankings. Because once again, our power rankings across the board are pretty much the same. I think we've got most of the teams that we expect to excelling. Yale C team, I think, at the top of all of those. As we look at Jai's here, and you can see Yale C team, Team Ambition Destiny, Ghost Raiders Legacy. Those are your top 3 teams right now. But realistically, it's just don't be 7th. You just need to make sure that you're qualifying for
Exactly.
the playoffs in that sense. And New Wave Vice, they had a little bit of a rough week 1. I think they had an FF there as well. So they've just got to pick up a couple of wins here and there. I think they had a really good bounce back week in week 2. They can definitely continue that road in week 3 here. But VBU had a really good week 2 as well. Stunned teams, not as much. And I think there are teams that need to come out with wins. And with these new rosters, definitely something to keep our eye on.
Yeah, I mean, look, we have a really good amount of exciting games ahead of us here, and I'm really hoping to see some of these what we think of as, maybe like bottom of the barrel type teams really kind of prove us wrong and show up there. As you guys will see, yes, all of our power rankings aren't too far from each other. We all have, some of those teams kind of at the top there, whereas I kind of, just off of what we've seen week one, I still need to see a little bit more here from Team Ambition Destiny, hence why I do have them in the third seed. But again, having done some work for them for their org as well, I know this is a team with a lot of rosters that have good coaching and good staff behind them. So Team Ambition Destiny very well can take over that second spot in my book.
And I think it's also important to look at what the rest of the league is going to do. Now that we're down to 17, it's a little bit of an interesting situation where, as we said, you just can't be last. But these stunned teams here, both in opposite divisions, both of them want to continue that sort of legacy in a sense that Stunned has done. They've always made playoffs. Both of their teams last year made playoffs. Stunned Gaming, Mythos, and Onslaught had a great start to the season, although last week went 0 or this week, yesterday, went 0-2. So
Yep.
it's about sort of consolidating what Stunned Gaming is all about and continuing that push forward towards playoffs because we know how dangerous they can be, but it's hard to take away anything from ELC team. They're a team that excelled in season 0 of Radiant Strike as well. And now moving into season 1 in the Guardian League, they're sort of uncontested in a sense, but really have to see the difference between the LC team and GRL here. That's really what the big fight is going to be for. Who's going to take over the top of the league as it stands right now? Because both of those teams look incredibly strong as we move into the latter half of this season.
Oh, definitely so, man. That's why I'm already at the point where I understand we're probably not going to be able to spectate the games live on stream. So I'm going to be constantly checking my phone on Discord after to see what the outcome was of Yale C team and GRL. Because I think I can speak for a lot of us when we say that's one of the more exciting matchups that we are expecting this week. It's always fun in general when you do have that top one and top two seed where both teams clearly have a lot of things working for them, but there still are some moving pieces. Again, this is still barely week 3 here, but we might see a little bit more of risky play that allows a team like GRL, the underdog in the matchup, to be able to try to take out Yale C team here. But again, I do want to go down a little bit in the ladder again and take a look at Stun Gaming Incarnate and SGC because these are those middle of the pack teams that not only determines, hey, if we do better than expected, not only is the top 3 teams going to be shaken up, but if we do worse than expected, it allows a spot for VBU Cobalt and New Wave Vice to still climb up that ladder. So I think having both of the Stun Gaming rosters in the middle section of the leaderboard here is going to really provide us a lot of interesting matchups coming up soon.
And I think the most interesting thing right now is just Ghost Raiders, Legacy, and ELC team. Both of them sitting at 3-1. They're neck and neck in the Ruby division. And Team Ambition Destiny, they're starting to run away a little bit with Sapphire division. Really
Yep.
just curious to see how that or the cross division play works out because there is a world where New Wave Vice doesn't make playoffs and Stun Gaming Cosmic does, but because they already have that victory under their belt, they just have to sort of get over the line a little bit more. They need to start pulling their weight just a little bit more, it seems, because while they are effectively given a free pass potentially, they still need to prove themselves against the other division. And, Ghost Raiders, Legacy, ELC team, both of them are very strong teams. It's more so New Wave Vice just need to go up against the likes of Stun Gaming, Cosmic, and VBU Cobalt and step forward. But realistically, the Ruby division, once again, going to be our exciting one to watch because everyone is within a game of each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I feel like we're having like 2 different little like sub rosters right there, where it's the top 3 gonna fight for those top 3 roles, and the bottom 4 as well here. But as we do move away from those power rankings, in which we have very minor differences here so far, I get the feeling things are gonna change a little bit here. I do want to take a second to kind of look at some of the more influential players here throughout the course of this division. Adam, I know top lane was one that we were kind of looking at as well, which some of these top laners are choosing to take into the top lane meta. We've had a couple changes, throughout the course of last season versus the beginning of this season here. So, are there any laners that do end up sticking out to you? And I do want to direct this more towards that top lane because it is that top lane that we have been seeing as one of those impactful roles with the jungle.
Yeah, I think the main ones that jump out right off the bat is Lawrence as well as Turtle Wizard. Both of them, very strong weak side players. And it seems like something weird to say, oh yeah, they're a weak side player, but it's important to have that sort of
Yeah.
staple up in that top lane. They've been so influential because they can play that weak side so well. They can play the Shen, they can play the Ornn, they can play these sort of beefier frontline members and be able to join these fights with so much impact. It's very much different from what we're seeing in Onslaught League, where Onslaught is all about these carry tops. We see Camille, we see Gwen, we see Jace come through as well. And here it's a little bit more on the back foot, saying we want that frontliner. We want to make sure that we can get to that mid late game and really feel confident in ourselves. But we haven't seen a whole lot out of Relexis yet. That's someone that we're going to have to keep our eye on as one of the substitutes for Stun Gaming Incarnate coming through. And Maiden OP now, I think a lot of the onus is on them to sort of step up their game a little bit because Stun Gaming Cosmic now at 1-3, they're still figuring things out. They're slowly but surely figuring things out. And with this roster change, I think it's important that the side of Cosmic really get into their own style in a sense. And I think
Right.
if that means pulling out the Yorick, as Maiden OP's name suggests,
Yes.
might be the option in some ways.
Well, yeah, I would answer back with how OP actually is it, and then if you say OP, let's kind of see it on the riff, right? So I like that you did bring up, the fact that we do see a bit of a different style. For me, being able to cast Onslaught League last week, starting Guardian, going Onslaught, now back to Guardian. Unfortunately, not being able to cast today because of the spectate here, but I did get to see kind of differences, and you actually really do kind of feel it on the rift here, and I completely agree. I do think more of that team-oriented play style that we've seen successful through our Guardian division is going to be a lot kind of more impactful having some of those team oriented play styles where if you're not having the most successful top lane, you wait for late game, you play TP, you play safe, and you kind of allow the rest of your team to carry. But, I would like to see some of those, some of those top lane plays come out as well, where we do see some of the aggression of Onslaught Division, where you're kind of trying to just force those leads and win through your lane and at least come out a lane ahead.
Yeah, and I think it really we look at the AD carries as well, the bot lane, because that's a point of contention for a lot of these teams. Some really good AD carry and support combos here in the Guardian League. We've got nice condemned Ceratosaurus. They're sort of the ones that pop off the sheet there. Opa Ivar and Jara as well. Very good bot lane duo. And even though the stunned bot lanes, they have some potential there. It's just about really capturing that potential, taking that next step forward, and really sort of consolidating themselves as one of the top bot lanes because there's seven of them to pick, right? We have to sort of pick and choose where the best ones are coming out. And I think even Jolteon and Loveless have done a great job of being a powerful combo in the bottom lane. They're able to carry their team to victory. And I want to see that more across the league. I think all of the
Right.
bot lanes are really close. I think the difference between them is pretty minimal. It's just about who can play around their team better. And sometimes that comes down to the other roles. And yes, we're just comparing all the
Yeah.
roles at this point, but
Yeah.
mid lane is definitely a big factor behind that. And Spires pulled out the Zoe, did a great job on that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think Jacob for Ghost Raiders Legacy has also been a very strong point. And looking at some of the lower teams in our league here, Ishan and Indigo, I think both of them are good players that their teams need to play around just a little bit more to push forward in the standings as well.
Yeah, and I'm starting to think that that's where kind of a lot of that impact on those win rates really come from, Adam, that we looked across earlier, whereas we've seen these very high tier supports who we see successful in a lot of different team compositions, like that Karma, like that Lulu, very top tier picks at empowering the AD carry and making sure you have that survivability in those late game fights do very well. I think the reason why we don't see them doing so well here is that, typically those are the champions that are mainly going to be on the AD carry or on an aggressive jungler who's looking to try to go forward, like that Xin Zhao we see with the 100% win rate in the Guardian division. But it's these mid laners who I think have had a lot of impact. And when you have someone like Zoe going 7-0 for Team Ambition, like we've seen last week, how much does that Karma really impact or that Lulu really impact what that Zoe's actually doing with their
Doesn't.
lead? Exactly.
It doesn't because there's that one shot potential. And I mean, when we were watching Team Ambition Destiny with that Zoe mid lane, LaRue was getting all excited. He was like, you know what? This is what
Yo,
happens when you give Zoe, 3 kills, 4 kills, 5 kills, 6 kills, building up, building up, building up from there. So really curious to
yo.
see how it develops from there. But I'm curious to see what other champions are going to start to rise to prominence in the next little bit because though that's really what's important to me is that After 2 weeks, there's still limited stats. With effectively 7 teams worth of games being logged, it's hard to say exactly what the power picks are, but as we get further on into the season, we're going to see what comes out on top and what teams really want to consolidate themselves along the top teams.
Absolutely, Adam. And as those teams are now on to the Rift here, I do think that is going to be almost concluding our pregame show here. But
Our only
the other
show for today, man.
yes, it's the pregame, the game, and the damn postgame, dude. Three birds being stoned at the same time, as they say. I think that's how the I've been watching too much Trailer Park Boys. I think is what the issue is here, Adam. But a lot of exciting games today and a lot of outcomes that we can't wait to see. And I'm excited to be able to go back through the power rankings and, scratch my head a little bit and run that pencil here. But any, overall thoughts on how today's games are going to go before we leave the broadcast here today?
I think the main thing that's going to happen this week is we're going to see the teams sort of separate themselves out a little bit. Everyone is still sort of a tight knit pack right now. It's still really difficult to see where everyone lines up. Yes, we have ELC team going 2-0 today. We have Team Ambition Destiny going 2-0. And then Stunned Gaming Cosmic and a uh Ra- Grim Rider Legacy. Yes, got to remember what that stands for. They are the ones who are stealing the extra games here, but you know, it means that VBU goes 0-2. It means that, you know, New Wave Vice and Stunned Gaming Incarnate, they're not picking up wins today. So it's hard to see exactly how that ends up playing out because it's effectively, while we're predicting winners, we're also predicting teams that are going 0-2. We're predicting that
Right.
VDU is going 0-2 here. We're predicting that GRL is going to fall to second place in their division. So we will see what happens because we could be very well upset by the fact that Grim Rider Legacy ends up picking up a victory versus ELC team. Then all of a sudden, all of our predictions are wrong
Yep.
here. VBU could come out the gates and just pick up a 2-0 as well. So I think that at the end of this week, first of all, we're going to need a way longer pre-show next week to go over all those games and everything. But
Let's hope the
uh,
client's ready for next week, though, by the way.
we would
Knocking on
hope
wood.
so. I mean, I'm curious about how any other amateur league is going to do it because unless you're playing on Tournament Realm or something, I think everyone is just broken.
I definitely agree. So we'll have to find out if any of those teams do get upset or if all of us had the same damn power rankings because our brains are all just that big. But on that note, guys, it is going to be it for us today during the pre-show, show, and post-show. We're going to have to wait and see how today's games come out, guys, and we'll catch you guys next week.